Welcome to a new episode of The Brand Called You. I am Arini and I am with Ashutosh Garg, the founder of the Guardian Pharmacy and Equation Coaching. We have been talking about personal branding these few days and we would like to continue our discussion. And let's turn a leaf from your book today, The Brand Called You, and let's discuss the attributes of personal branding.
Sure.
Um, but before we move on to these attributes, I would like to ask one thing, and that's about the persona. You quote in your book, your persona, brand you, will define how you will be perceived by your audience and in the rest of your world. So, what exactly is my persona?
So, all of us have a physical presence and we have a perceived presence. How many times have you seen when you are looking at somebody and you say, oh, this person is, I think, an iOS person, or so and so is an Android person, or this person, I don't think I can trust him or her, or this person, I can rely on for anything, right? I'm sure you'll have many, many such examples of people and similarly, people experience you. So, one is your physical persona, which is I'm an engineer, I'm an MBA, I'm a social media expert, I'm the big shot in my own organization, I'm an entrepreneur, I'm the CEO sitting in the corner office, etc. And then there is the perceived persona, which we all create. And the perceived persona has a very direct implication on how others see you, feel you, and sense you.
Right.
So the combination of your physical persona and your perceived persona is what you are as a package.
Okay, that makes sense. So I'm definitely an iOS person.
Okay.
Only an Apple person, I guess. Okay, thank you. Let's move on to these attributes. So there are 8 attributes. I'll start with the first one. The first one you say is relevance. So what is this relevance? How should I establish my relevance? How do I make sure that I am relevant within my peer group, or even better still, in a wider audience? I go to an event. How should I be? How should I stand out from my peers?
So, Aruni, remember that when we talk about a personal brand, there is very little that is different from a personal brand that would not relate to a toothpaste brand or a motor car brand or any other brand, right? So, when we speak relevance, we speak about us as individuals and how relevant they are in the communities or the circles that we are in. Am I relevant in the community that I live in? What does that mean? If there is a challenge in the community, do people reach out to me for counsel? Or do they just say, no, I don't think we can really rely on this person's judgment? If I'm in a work environment, do people, does my boss or does my subordinate, does my peer reach out to me and say, hey, listen, Ashutosh, can you give me some advice? Can you give me some guidance? So relevance is in different forms, even in the world of cricket.
Right.
You know that the Indian cricket team has been struggling to find a batsman at number 4 place. Right? Whoever they find will be the most relevant individual in terms of their personal brand for that slot. And yet we know that there are several people who could come in as the number 3 position or number 5 position.
Mm-hmm.
So you may be relevant at number 3 or number 5, but there you have to really be the greatest to be able to get selected. Right. So relevance is defined primarily between as what you are capable of doing, and second, how are you being perceived by the other members of the community.
Okay, so that brings me to another point that you have written, and you say proper positioning. And I'll take example that you just took, a batsman at position 4. So how do I position myself with my own uniqueness, and So how do I start? Should I start by doing a market research, because that's what I do for positioning brands? But then when my personal brand is in question, how should I find my position in the world?
So, you don't have to go out and ask questions about your personal brand, but in every interaction that you have with friends, including when you go to a large party, your positioning is being given back to you all the time. So you'll have someone who's very, very gregarious. You'll have someone who's constantly, the so-called, if I can use the word, the clown of the party. You'll always have someone who's the very sober person. You'll always have someone who finds it the best and the easiest to go and stand in the balcony with his drink and keep, morose. So you have all kinds of individuals.
Right.
And, in an office environment, you could be the greatest social media expert. You could be the greatest brand manager. You could be the greatest accountant.
Right.
So it is these kind of positionings that you are grappling with all your life, and this keeps changing.
Okay.
So if I know people who have been great accountants who become chief financial officers, and then they've been promoted to chief executive officer and they failed.
Oh.
Right? Because they were great line managers, and therefore their positioning was fantastic as a line manager. But the moment they got into general management, they were not able to succeed.
So are you saying that my positioning will evolve over time?
Absolutely.
And I should always revisit my positioning every few years or whenever I find the opportunity?
You will automatically keep doing it if you are aware of your brand.
Right.
So when I was a professional manager, I had a certain positioning. Brand Ashutosh Garg was perceived as a senior manager in the corporate world, etc. When I became an entrepreneur, my whole positioning changed. And I used to also talk about it primarily from the perspective of being able to communicate. So when people said, "Now what do you do?" I said, "I become a shopkeeper." Right? And that's what I was, building a chain of stores. Now when we are talking of the brand called you, I say my positioning has changed again and I become a storyteller. Right? So it's the way you are able to perceive yourself, and if you are clear in your own mind that this is how I wish to be perceived, every action that you take will then ensure that that's the kind of positioning that will be communicated.
Okay. So now that my positioning changes over time, that brings me to the third point. And you have stressed on this point repeatedly, and that's consistency. You have mentioned it many a times in multiple interviews that consistency is the key to success and even personal branding. Now that my positioning is changing, and especially you, I mean, you have been a professional, a very successful one at that, head of very fantastic companies, big, rich companies, and then you turned an entrepreneur where you had to be, and every entrepreneur in the beginning is some sort of a beggar, pardon my word, but a beggar. So how did you take the transition into a very, very successful person in an authoritative position to a person who has to ask for funds?
Correct. So let's talk of the word consistency. Right? Consistency of an individual does not change. And what is the meaning of consistency? And again, let's draw on examples from people all of us know. You say, "Oh, this guy's a very solid guy." Whatever that means. But the moment you say, "Oh, this person is a very solid person," you got a certain persona that is there in your mind, and that will probably stay like that as long as you know the individual.
Right.
You will say to some people, "I think this guy's too flaky. I don't think I can rely on him." Right? When you are traveling somewhere and you will tell your family, "Hey, listen, if you have a problem, reach out to these two friends. Because I know if there's a problem in the middle of the night, they will be available."
Right.
Same thing applies in the corporate world. You will find there will be some individuals in your office who you will always reach out to because you know their behavior pattern will be consistent. There are others who may be very, very good people, but they are not consistent in the sense that today they are absolute stars. Tomorrow, for whatever mood swings or whatever, a bad day or whatever may have happened, they may just not exhibit a very consistent kind of a persona to you. And therefore, you need to be consistent as far as possible. I'm not saying that 24 hours a day, 365 days a year for your entire life, you will have to be the same. But it's the perception of consistency that you will give to everyone else is what will define how consistent or inconsistent you are.
Okay, so is it, am I right in saying that you should build a persona where people can depend on you if you want to succeed in life?
Sure. I mean, look around at anybody. Who do you want to be with? Someone you can depend on.
Correct.
All right. Correct. If you can't depend on someone, it's more of a transactional relationship.
Right.
To say that, hey, listen, I can't depend on him, but I need him for a certain part of my business.
Right.
Let me finish that work and then carry on with my life.
Right. Okay, moving on. One of the points that you point out, which are the attributes of a personal brand, is sustainable. I understand how a brand can be sustainable. They can adopt sustainable methods in their packaging or other attributes. But how do I ensure that my brand is sustainable? Is it like something that I can do repeatedly, or is it sustainable from the ecological perspective?
No, not from an ecological or environmental perspective. But again, like perception, like consistency, we as human beings need to be able to consistently give a similar kind of a message that keeps going out.
Right.
And if you are coming to me and asking me to do something, I need to be able to sustain in my reaction to you, rather than be one thing today, another thing tomorrow, a third thing day after. So, like being consistent, you're no different from, as an individual, you're no different from the packaging of a bar of soap, for example. You want to have a sustainable packaging. Similarly, as human beings, it's very important for us to be perceived as people who we can trust, who we can rely on, and who will sustain the test of time in our relationship.
Okay. So, is my personal brand limited to my work, or does it extend to my personal life as well?
Oh, your personal brand is a function of several things. And I've said this, that the day you were born, you were given your brand name, right? So half your brand name was given to you, and the other half which was handed over to you as a part of your family name.
Correct.
So Aruni was your given name, family name is Chaudhary. That is your registered brand name.
Right.
And over a period of time, you have evolved your persona, which will be able to define what kind of a human being you are, how you relate with your friends, family, relatives, etc., how you perform at work. So you as an individual will generally have a similar kind of a set of parameters, whether it's at work or at home. It's just that we are all human beings, we are all smart. So sometimes in the workplace, we tend to adapt certain kinds of behaviors which are not necessarily our normal persona. So, for example, you may be very, very short-tempered at home, but because you've been given feedback many times that, hey, you're a very short-tempered individual, you may temper it down when you are at the workplace.
But is that sustainable?
Correct.
Is
So
it
that-
sustainable? Because at home I'm short-tempered. At office, if even no matter how much I try, there's going to be that one day
where you will snap.
will snap.
But by and large, what would happen is if you're being given constant feedback, you will be able to adapt
Okay.
to a more sustainable pattern at work. And the mind is a strange organ we all have. I mean, it's able to control a lot of our emotions. And if we are aware of negative emotions, we are able to control them.
Okay. So that brings me to your next point, and that's credibility. I am human. I'm going to snap that one time. So I'm also going to make mistakes. So does my mistakes damage my credibility, or how do I ensure that I'm credible all the time?
So I don't think mistakes ever damage credibility.
Okay.
I think what damages credibility is repetition of mistakes. Right? And you must have heard this many times from your parents, from your colleagues. You must be telling people, I don't have a problem if you make a mistake, but I have a big problem if you repeat that mistake, because that means you're not learning.
Right.
So I don't think a mistake damages credibility at all. What damages credibility is that as human beings, we live in society and we have certain norms. Example, I will not use abusive language when I'm in office, right? Or I will not steal
Right.
from the cash box, or I will not do something which is, not morally right. Now, if I am seen to be doing things which are not correct or which are not within the so-called mores of society, then I will have a problem of being able to establish my credibility.
Okay.
So, if I come to you for a job and you've read about the fact that, oh, this guy was caught in a stealing incident, you'll never hire me. Why? Because I'm not credible.
Correct.
Right?
Right.
So I think that is where, as a personal brand, becomes more credible. And in today's world, where everything is so digital and nothing you say, write, or do can ever be deleted.
Right.
It will always exist in some computer somewhere.
Right.
The ability to track down what you have said or done will always be there.
Right.
So therefore, your personal brand has to keep on investing in its own credibility, which must sustain the test of time.
Makes sense. Now we are at the last three attributes, and I have had a lot of trouble understanding these
Yeah.
attributes. The first one is inspirational. What does inspirational mean? Does it mean that I have to deliver TED Talks to people every time I meet them, or should I quote inspirational quotes?
It means neither of the two.
Okay.
You could be a Sadguru, or you could be a Swami Ramdev, or you could be a Sri Ravi Shankar, or any of the other inspirational leaders, or a Dalai Lama. But those are people who have reached a very high place in their own persona. But when I talk of inspiration, I talk of inspiration of people like you and me. And when I talk of inspiration is, am I able to inspire confidence in my colleagues, in my subordinates?
Right.
Am I able to inspire my superiors to say, I trust this guy and he will be able to deliver what we are asking him to do?
Okay.
So inspiration is a combination of what you are being asked to do, how you are being able to interact with a large community of people, and how you are being perceived by your peers.
Okay.
Having said that, there is, I think I've given this example once earlier, about this one individual who was used to sit at the cash box and in a checkout line in a supermarket. And there would be a line of 50 people who would be queued up and didn't mind waiting 20 minutes because they wanted to check out with him.
Right.
But on the other hand, this The manager went to him and said to the people, and said, why don't you go to the other line? And they said, no, we don't want to go to the other line. And then when he found out, this young person, cashier, every night used to write out an inspirational quote and would put that into every checkout bag.
Right.
So people would wait for that also.
So you should be somebody that people look up to.
Correct.
And feel comfortable being around.
Correct.
And of course, credibility is one of them. But then inspiration is you should be able to inspire good in other people.
Yeah.
I guess that's what it means.
Yeah. Inspire your teams to perform better.
Right. The second one, or the seventh in the attribute list, is uniqueness. In this world of airbrushed photographs, and in fact, I'll give you one example. If I have to look up baby names, a lot of my friends are having their first kids, and they give names to their babies based on the domain name available.
Correct.
Now, it is so difficult to find such names because all domains are booked. So how do I find my uniqueness in this world of all booked domain names?
So I think it would be very short-sighted if we say that a domain name is what defines us being unique, right? I mean, I think I have come across at least a dozen Ashutosh Gargs, and mind you, I was born in 1956, and there are Ashutosh Garg which have been born, and at least 4 of them have connected with me on LinkedIn.
Wow.
Right? So therefore, by that logic, there's nothing unique about my name. Names like a Sunil Gupta or a Tom Jones or Jack Smith. These are the millions and millions of people. So I don't think name is what would define uniqueness. But what would define uniqueness is an RNE who is unique in terms of your understanding of the social media space. Unique in the way that you love to go and drive your truck up into the mountains and live with nature. Unique in the sense that you want to play a musical instrument, right? And then if you were to put these 8-10 different types of things together, that is what is the uniqueness. So there may be a dozen Arani Chowdhuries, but it's highly unlikely that there'll be an Arani Chowdhury who is good in social media, who drives a truck, who plays cricket, who plays music, right? Who likes to collect black vinyl records and things like that, right?
Yeah.
So I think that is the uniqueness that you have as an individual, and that is what brand you has to be able to embody.
Wow.
How am I unique with everybody else in the world?
That makes a lot of sense because I know only one other Oroni, and he's in Calcutta, and he's a quite a famous chef of a very, very popular
and you enjoy
restaurant.
Cooking too?
I enjoy cooking too, but then he's much better because he's a chef and he's actually making money out of making food. So yes, that's his uniqueness, and this Arani is doing this. And the third one, third most difficult thing that I find very difficult to understand, and the eighth in the list of attributes of personal branding is appealing. Now, I have a problem with that because I can't be lovable all the time.
Correct.
I'm going to have my bad days, and I can't please people all the time. I find that personally quite difficult, though I'm not. I think that I'm lovable, but then still I can't be lovable all the time.
So I'm not at all saying you have to be lovable. What I'm saying is appealing. Appealing means if you and I are sitting in a room together, right? Am I able to communicate with you? Do I feel comfortable in being able to shake your hand and say, hello, I'm so and so. What do you do? Two strangers sitting in a plane or in a bus, or two strangers sitting in a coffee shop alone and say, Luis, can we start talking? Two colleagues, working together and saying, do I have the ability to communicate with this individual without getting worried that there are certain barriers that are drawn around the individual, or there are certain walls around the individual? And I'm sure we have all seen colleagues, superiors, subordinates, where you say, listen, I can't reach out to the guy. If I go in, he gives me such a nasty look that I don't feel like entering the office.
Right.
Or someone walks past my chair, some senior guy, and I quickly jump up and stand out of respect, right? The guy comes and stands next to me, and I'm shivering because I don't know what he will say or what he will look at. Right? So it is just how easy it is for you to be approached by other people, how easy it is for you to approach other people,
Right.
and how easy it is to be able to mingle with one another at home, in the environment, at work, and in the society.
Thank you. That clarifies a lot. I hope you will find this as interesting and educative as I did. These 8 points are listed in the comments below. If you have any questions, please do reach out to us and we would like to answer them in one of our episodes. Thank you and keep watching The Brand Called You. Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You podcast. Be sure to visit tbcy.in to join the conversation, access show notes, and discover fantastic bonus content. You can follow us on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Simply search for The Brand Called You. Thank you and see you next week.